Afternoon, everyone, and morning, I guess, if you're on the West Coast. My name is Rich Walega, and I am Vice President with Avaap, and I run our Workday government practice. And today, happy to have with us three executives, Jarrett Morgan from Memphis-Shelby County Airport Authority, Bill Serva from Goodwill of Northern and Central Arizona, and Hampton Shive, CIO for Hinds Community College in Mississippi. And we're here today and really fortunate to have them share some of their experiences on their digital transformation efforts as they work with their organizations and their specific industries to make the lives of their folks better and ultimately the constituents they serve. At the cornerstone of their digital transformation effort is a move to a new ERP, and specifically Workday. All three organizations chose Workday for various reasons, and a big part of the business effectiveness they were trying to achieve. So what we wanted to do today was take some time, get to know each of the individuals a little better, understand what was behind their digital transformation efforts, specifically Workday. And then a lot of things have happened, as we all know, with COVID and the pandemic, affected each of these organizations in a very unique way. And I want to hear from them about how they've managed through that, and also what the impacts and the benefits of Workday has provided through them. Bill is not quite through his implementation yet, so his journey is still in process, but I think we're excited to get started. So with that, I guess we want to start, and Hampton, can you kick us off with a little bit about who you are, your organization, and how you got started on this journey?
Sure. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be here and share the story of Hinds Community College. I am the AVP for Business Services and CIO. I have been in high-tech, higher ed for almost 30 years. I've been in the current role for 8 years. And I really began to notice several years ago that the college was going into numerous new directions that were innovative for our region. And they had a lot to do with partnerships, industry partnerships, a lot of next generation career tech programs. We really began to shift our focus toward providing more market needs in our communities. And so the college was attempting to do the right thing, and yet the business of the college was really constraining us. And every time that the service delivery side of the organization wanted to innovate and wanted to do something differently, it seemed that somehow or another, the business side and or the technology was constraining us. We had challenges understanding our cash flow. We were not able to really articulate our true cost structure, challenging to align revenues with different areas of the college. Essentially, we were operating with a tool set that was designed and executed for a different version of the college, and that would have been in the late 90s. I think that when it really occurred to me that I had to begin moving us aggressively forward, I was sitting in the president's office with the CFO, and we were reviewing our FY18 audit. And we got 6 findings that year, which is the most that we had ever had. In reviewing those, there was absolutely no question that 5 of those were a direct result of an ERP system that just could not meet our needs. And we were pushing it to the limit, and it was failing us. And that was evident on a day-to-day basis, but it was really hard to deny what was in front of us with these audit findings. And so it was really at that time that we decided we have got to make a change. And that's really where our journey to modernize began.
Did you mind sharing your story, a little bit of background, please?
No, absolutely not. Thank you for having me, Rich. My name is Jarrett Morgan. I'm the Chief Information Officer at the Memphis-Shelby County Airport Authority. Before I share a little bit about how we arrived at or made the decision to move forward with our digital transformation program, I want to share a little bit about our airport. We're actually comprised of 3 airports. We have Memphis International and 2 general aviation airports. We typically see around 4.3 metric tons of cargo annually, which makes us the 2nd busiest cargo airport in the world, and the 1st busiest or the busiest airport, cargo airport in North America. We have about 300 employees, so relatively small organization, which made implementation of Workday challenging, to say the least. We have an HR department that's comprised of 5 individuals, finance comprised of 10, and IT comprised of 9. So that presented its own challenges for sure. A few years ago, we very much like Hampton, we became aware that our organization clearly was not as efficient as we would like to see it on the business side. Obviously, on the airfield side, things were running very smoothly, but we're unable to provide the level of our quality of services that we wanted on the business side of the house. So we started to identify systems that were siloed, that were standalone, legacy systems that were no longer supported by vendors. And we were really surprised and shocked at what we had and how our end users were utilizing existing systems, and really how siloed our data was. So we made the decision, we have to do better, and we developed a digital transformation plan, and the cornerstone of that plan obviously was the ERP. What we wanted to do was to be able to consolidate several systems into one and be able to utilize the data that we were collecting every day and utilize that in a much more efficient manner. So our environment was probably not unique to most government entities. We have a lot of long tenured employees. Most of our employees have been here anywhere from 15 to 25 years, some 35 and 40 years, and they're very resistant to change. So it's a unique environment, and to probably most other Workday implementations, because we are an airport. There's some one-offs that are just challenging, but we'll share more about that, I'm sure, a little further down into the webinar. But thanks again for having me, Rich.
You're welcome. I appreciate that. And Bill, want to give us a little bit your background? What got you started on your transformation?
Sure, absolutely. So my name is Bill Serva. I'm the Vice President of Information Technology for Goodwill of Central and Northern Arizona. For those of you that don't know, Goodwills are all independently operated, and they have their own territory, and so there's about 160 of them in the world. We are one of the largest, and I saw a couple of my colleagues on here, so thanks for joining my other friends in the Goodwill family. I've been with this organization for 10 years now. I started in 2010. We were much smaller. We had 40 stores, and we did less than $100 million in revenue, less than 1,000 employees. And we've really grown in the last 10 years. Currently, we're over $200 million revenue organization. We provide services to hundreds of thousands of job seekers a year to help them find work or find better jobs or to get trained on digital skills. Our systems just weren't keeping up. We've been a little bit behind the curve. We did a point of sale implementation a few years ago because that was the most important. Our point of sale just wasn't able to keep up with the amount of transactions that we were doing on the front end. But then in the last year, the beginning of last year, we started talking about ERP and consolidating our HR, finance, and payroll systems. Right now, we have over a dozen systems that do HR, finance, payroll. We actually built our own applicant tracking system, which I would not recommend to anyone. That was a big mistake. But when you're a nonprofit and you don't have a lot of money, you do stuff like that. And so this, we did a 6-month really evaluation and selection process. And Workday, the combination of Workday and Avaap really made sense for us. It made the most sense for us to consolidate HR, finance, and payroll on one system and to gain some huge operational efficiencies, as well as position us for future growth. There's been a lot of talk about more and more mergers within the Goodwill family. We did a merger with Northern Arizona a few years ago, and there will be more of those. And we need to make sure that our systems can support those kinds of activities in the future.
Appreciate that, Bill. I mean, you kind of lead into another question I'll ask Jared to chime in on this, is that obviously each of you in your organizations as part of your ERP evaluation chose to go with Workday. A lot of other products out there in the market. What was different about Workday, and what made you finally say yes? Jared?
Well, I'll talk a little about our criteria, what we were looking for. Obviously, we wanted a cloud solution. Workday checked that box. We wanted a solution that would allow us that consolidation that I mentioned a few minutes ago with several systems: HR, payroll, finance, learning management. We wanted the whole suite of products, and Workday did provide that suite of products that fit our business need. But what we really liked about Workday was it's highly configurable, and there's no customization. What I found very interesting that I didn't know before we moved forward with the platform was that every Workday customer uses the same version of Workday. Every twice a year they perform upgrades. But I really like that because that means that our organization with 100,000 employees would be using the same tools that we're using, the same feature set. And I really like that. And another thing that really stood out to me was the Workday culture. Workday has a quality assurance program. It's called Delivery Assurance that stood out to me. It was a no-fail scenario is what it felt like to me. They've done this before. They have a proven implementation approach that was very attractive to our team, and they've done it with organizations of all sizes, and with implementation partners such as Avaap, who follow this approach. It felt very foolproof and felt like that they had a path to success that would be hard to deviate from. And then lastly, Rich, they have a great training program, lots of training available, both within their Workday community, which is an online forum of Workday users, and within their LMS, and it's just very robust. And we felt like that we could train our staff to any level needed to be successful. So those are the things that were very attractive to us.
Okay, thank you. Hey, Bill, you were leading into the answering some of the, or talking about kind of that, what I was asking about, why Workday. Do you want to add on or what you found different about the product, and again, why you made that decision?
Yeah, absolutely. We looked at a dozen different platforms, and we looked at some, just HR and just finance systems, but that, for what we wanted to accomplish, it just didn't really make sense. And the tight integration between HR, finance, and payroll for us was really attractive, because it made things that we were doing manually a lot easier. I mean, one example of that is our bonus program for referring people to the organization. Right now, it's all managed on paper, and you got to put it in a file. In 6 months, you got to check to see if the person's still employed, and then you can cut them a check. And we could automate all that in Workday because the finance system is connected to, and the payroll system are connected to the HR system. An employee does a referral, and then 6 months later, if all the boxes are checked, the system just adds the payout to the person's paycheck. And that, combined with the number of years of experience of the people on the implementation team, there are several people that were former Workday employees, or had done Workday implementations in other companies or had done several with Avaap. I think that our engagement manager has done over a dozen. So, seeing that experience as well as the robustness of the product, it just made sense.
Okay, thank you. Hampton?
So there are two areas that really stood out to me that differentiated Workday. And I would say the first one was the Workday culture. Jarrett mentioned that. I really picked up on that from the very first call with the very first account executive that contacted me and had a conversation with me about Workday. It was a very good conversation. He followed it up with an email. And the very tone of the email really struck me. There was something different about it. And basically what it said was, I appreciate the opportunity to have visited with you about your existing legacy environment. I found all of that fascinating. We have a very strong solution and would love to continue this dialogue and tell you how we can help you transform your business. And it's interesting because that very account executive is still with the company. He's moved up in the sales org, but I had a conversation with him, I believe it was actually yesterday. And so I started to see from the very beginning, everybody that I talked with at Workday had a passion about the company. They had a passion about the products, and it really shone through. There was an authenticity in the way that they were presenting themselves, the company, the products. And I have found that to be incredibly consistent. The entire sales organization, and I know it 4 layers up from where we have our primary account executive, it's the exact same team that was in place when we began this journey. I know all of them by their first names. I speak with them. Just real consistency within the organization. And that was very attractive. I was not accustomed to that kind of stability and that kind of consistency across the culture. I think the second thing that really stood out to me was the technology. I absolutely loved the idea that this company could be born in 2005 and have 0 legacy product base, have 0 legacy customers, build something almost a little before its time, and then suddenly time rolls on and they are a cloud-only provider, and they clearly have experience from the past, from the PeopleSoft world. And so it's almost as though this company that has been successful globally and got to step back and then come back to the table and say, knowing what we know now, let's do it all over and let's do it even better. And it really shows through in the technology. I was thinking this morning, we were in a leadership meeting. We were talking about what's coming up this fall. And we mentioned the Workday release that will be coming out, I believe it's in September. And I was thinking about how different that world is from the legacy system that we're moving away from. We still have it for our student information system. And I was thinking about the challenges that we face, keeping it running, patching it, just tending to it so that it's available. And in the Workday world, those are not pieces of the puzzle that we have to worry about anymore. And it's huge in our environment. And so another thing that really attracted me, was very attractive to me, and it has really taken me, it took going through the implementation to realize the power of it. It has to do with the object-oriented model. I knew it was a completely different technology in terms of data and data structures, and I was intrigued by that. But I'll touch on it a little bit more, how powerful it is. But clearly there were some things that Workday was doing differently, and we were looking for different. We were very clear that what we had was not working, and we did not want just a facelift on what we had. We really wanted an overhaul. And we saw that in Workday. And being on the other side of the deployment now, I can attest that our vision for what we wanted and our belief that Workday could deliver that, they have absolutely aligned. And it is even more powerful and better than we wanted it to be on the front end.
Okay. Hampton, you kind of set up next question I want to have here. And Bill, you can start it off. What is, each of you had different journeys on implementing. At Memphis, Jarrett, you implemented in 2 phases. About over 16 months, 18 months. You started with HR that went live in this past January, and then finance just this past July. Hampton, we started about this time last year, and you went live with HR, finance, and payroll in 11 months. And Bill, you started just, I guess, February-ish, right? Or you're right almost in the middle of your implementation. So I guess my question to you is, through the journey, if you guys can give examples of like those aha moments when you'd made these decisions, the project is ramping up, and you're starting to say, this is really, it's going to start solving my business problems. So can you share a few of those examples? Bill, we'll start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the biggest aha moments has been doing what's called customer confirmation sessions. And it's where you have a business lead walk through the process that you've built inside the Workday application. And so an example of that would be recruiting. And recruiting would go through, and this is how you post a position. This is how a candidate applies for a position. And because our processes have been so manual, I think the mindset of the people setting up some of those customer confirmation sessions were that they were going to take, in some cases, 4 hours, and we got through them in an hour and a half or 2 hours. And so, just even thinking about the amount of work that it took to do those things in the past, that translated to planning for these customer confirmation sessions. And even the people planning them were, I think, shocked at how quickly they were able to get things done that took a lot of time in the past. And that's been consistent throughout each of these. And the other cool thing about those customer confirmation sessions is that we've been bringing in people from the business that have not been involved on the project, other people in the department that will be impacted by this, and people have just been blown away by the number of efficiencies that are gonna come out of this.
Interesting. Jarrett, you want to chime in?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you, from the moment we started to really hone in on Workday, I knew that it was going to be a game changer. But that validation of that instinct was during our end-to-end testing, where you're actually seeing the final configuration of the product from your conceptual ideas to actually being a functioning system, although not refined, but a functioning system. We started to hear the oohs and ahs from our HR staff, and I'll be honest with you, we actually had one of our HR managers that cried. She was so happy with the recruiting process. Bill, you touched on that before, and this is a little embarrassing to say, but when you applied to work at the Airport Authority, you actually had to fill out a paper application and scan it and bring it back here. And for that process to be so completely revamped and so modernized, and the way that applicant information flows from an applicant to an employee, and it was just a game changer, literally, for our organization. You think about how, if you're an applicant and you're interested in working for Memphis International, and you have to fill out a paper application, that's probably turning off a lot of really qualified potential employees. And so just having this modern, really cool, slick recruiting and applicant process was a game changer. But it has been a huge monumental change for us. And another moment that really stands out, Rich, is before we went live with our HR HCM tools, we had what we called a Workday Fair, where we introduced Workday to all of our employees, and we brought them over to a common area and allowed them to download the app and play with that. And we had several kiosks set up. And again, I mentioned before that we have employees that are really resistant to change. They just want to keep doing what they've always done. If it's not broke, why fix it? But you could just see everybody, their eyes lit up and they were like, oh my goodness, this is amazing what we can do. Just requesting time off and being able to see your accruals for time. And then that same excitement and momentum that we built up before the phase one launch just created so much more excitement for phase two with our procurement and financials. It's been absolutely amazing to see. But yeah, there were several aha moments for us where it's like, oh my gosh, this is really going to change our organization. And it's been fantastic.
Thank you. That's powerful. Hampton, you're a month into it. What do you have to share?
Countless moments through the project, since we've gone live, where the power of it, you realize what you now have available to you. And I want to touch on a couple different areas, primarily around financials. In our legacy system, we had around 14,000 general ledger accounts. And the general ledger accounts were, of course, that's enormous sprawl, but a lot of that was because that was the only place where we could have granularity around transactions. And so in this relational database world, when a transaction begins, by the time it ends and something is written to the GL, there's not a lot of information around that single transaction. Henceforth, having to have all of these different GL accounts to be able to put things into so that you can then come back and say, oh, well, that's a revenue and that's blah, 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 or that's a asset account or whatever. So we pivoted from well over 10,000 GL accounts to now we have under 200. So those two numbers alone show what a incredibly different architecture it is. Well, the way that's possible, it's this object-oriented model. And so what happens is when a transaction begins, you start to add these details to the objects that are involved in these transactions so that when they finally end up in their resting spot, if you will, they're so data rich. And then you can then apply your queries or your reporting against those, and it's completely multidimensional because you have this literally the sea of objects out there that have all these attributes tied to them. And you literally can just pivot these attributes off and on to be able to look at the data from all these different angles. And we just couldn't do that in our legacy environment. When we wanted to get a snapshot of revenue over a period of time in our legacy environment, incredibly difficult. You had to know where all of the revenue accounts were. And if any had been created that were outside of that fixed syntax, you had to know where all those exceptions were. In Workday, you get the opportunity to have hierarchies. You can have multiple hierarchies. And so I remember the first time that I ran a trial balance on the revenue side of things. And I was sitting with the comptroller and we run a trial balance, and in 3 seconds, we have a complete picture of the revenue. And we just this sounds silly, we just started giggling. It was just like, can this be real? And we've had countless moments like that. One other, our board reports. It used to take 3 people in accounting 2.5 days every single month to create these board reports. So that was over 3,000 minutes every month that staff of that group of 3 was investing in these board reports. When I ran the board reports in Workday, I ran them myself, and I ran them in 21 minutes. And I actually was in the first board meeting yesterday where the board members got the new reports. And it was really, really fascinating to watch them digest the information. So the idea of taking, literally giving accounting 2.5 days every month back, it's huge. And I remember at the beginning of the project, I completed one of the, I cannot recall the name of it, value realization surveys from Workday. And one of the questions was, how much time does your accounting team spend on strategic work? And without even thinking about it, I put 0%. You know, they didn't know strategic work because they were spending all their time just working through a structure that was outdated. So, Rich, I could go on about this because there have been just endless opportunities where things that we conceptualized, sort of to Jared's point, when you see it in end-to-end testing for the first time, you're thinking, wow, you know, this is super powerful. The business process, the audit trail around things, it timestamps everything to 1,000th of a second. And it does not do anything without putting that stamp of who did it and where it came from and the time on it. So you get into the project and it sort of reveals itself to you how this new tool set is going to enable you not just have digital transformation, but to truly transform your business and the way you think about your business.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I mean, it's interesting to, I was part of 2 of your journeys. Bill, I'm not as close to yours, but it's been interesting to see that come to realization and to hear those stories. I definitely appreciate it. And with that and helping to get to those moments, I mean, it's important to ask, I mean, we're clearly your partner. It takes a good partner in order to deploy these types of solutions. I mean, I'd like to ask and get your feedback. I mean, what made your decisions to choose us, Avaap, to help you through this really, transformative effort? Hampton, we could start with you, and then Jared and Bill.
Sure. When we began this journey, obviously we're looking at Workday, and then the account executive begins to introduce me to this concept of this partner ecosystem. And the idea of a closed ecosystem, it's the first time we had ever worked in an environment like that. And so I had the opportunity to meet executives and consultants from 4 deployment partners. So I had the opportunity over a series of months to really begin to understand the partner ecosystem better. And it ultimately got down to 2 partners that came on site and did the presentations for us. But it was really interesting. At the beginning of the entire discovery process, I recognized that I was personally in new territory and the college was in new territory. I have led countless projects in the $50,000 to $100,000 range, but this was at a scale that I'd never worked before and truly did not have the experience of really vetting a project of this scale without some kind of methodology. So what I kept coming back to was the people and the quality of the people, the authenticity of the people. And I was extremely impressed with everyone that I met at Avaap. And it was interesting because when Avaap and the other partner came on campus, we had an evaluation group of around 25. And after those 2 sessions, I asked everyone that was there to send me their comments about who they felt the better partner was. And there was one person for a very specific technical reason said, I think it should be partner B. But without a doubt, everybody else in that room said, we prefer Avaap. We felt like they were genuine. We felt like they had our best interests at heart. We feel like we could work with them better. And that was a huge determining factor for us. And I have to say that our instinct was right on with that. I have been continually impressed with all layers of the Avaap organization. Rich and his peers, the executive team, extremely strong. The consultants, project leadership, incredible strength. And I can even talk about yesterday as it continues to this day. I received an escalation from HR yesterday about some things that had popped up in their environment that they weren't expecting, and they really didn't know how to handle it. Immediately called our engagement manager. We had a very productive call, made some tweaks internally. She aligned some different resources for us. By the end of the day yesterday, we had a very strong plan of how to move this forward. And I got very appreciative notes from our director and assistant director of HR yesterday afternoon about we really needed the support, and Avaap is going to help us with this. And our project has been marked by a stream of things that if it could have gone wrong, they went wrong. It has just been constant. And there have been no fewer than 10 times where I've really, really worried, are we going to get this done on time? You know, is this going to cost 2 times what we thought it was going to cost? And every single time, Avaap has delivered a solution that it's really been what we needed. And it's been thoughtful. And I want to key in on one aspect of this. Avaap brought some resources in to the team that were younger people that were newer to the Workday ecosystem. And they started using them in junior roles on the project. And they were super talented. And as those people got more comfortable with the specifics of our project, when it was appropriate, they would shift work to these people. And so effectively what was happening was they were shifting work appropriately to lower cost resources, which enabled us to get more time, more brain power, if you will, at the same cost. And even though you get a monthly statement where everything is itemized and you know to the hour and the dollar who's doing what, there's clearly a lot of room for where, you know, Avaap or any provider could have done that and not really passed that benefit on to the client. But I consistently saw them identify wins on the client side and pass those on to us. And so what it's helped me really understand is they're absolutely not a one and done organization. They take a long-term view of the relationship. And in our case, that has been priceless for us because that approach has enabled us to get a broader and deeper set of resources than we anticipated going into the project. So across the board, the entire Avaap team is bar none the highest quality professional services organization that I have worked with in my entire tech career. And I would put them up against anyone in the world in terms of authenticity, capability, and genuineness. They really cared about the success of Hinds Community College and our people. And it really shows in the work that they do.
Appreciate you sharing that, Hampton. Means a lot to us and all of our people, for sure. I'm glad. Jarrett, you mind chiming in?
How do I follow that up, Rich? I mean, come on.
Gonna send.
No, I'll tell you, we have very similar experiences, Hampton. I'll say that, and we were looking for an implementation partner who would not only come in and just follow that Workday methodology that we talked about, but that would really want to understand our business. And that's critical. I mentioned, running an airport is a little different than most governmental entities. Our financial model is a little bit different. And there are only a handful of airports that have Workday right now. And we're sort of on the bleeding edge of this world. And so we wanted someone who would really just that not only understood Workday and the implementation process, but would understand our business. And that's what really stood out with Avaap, is they were interested in us, interested in the way that that we did work now, how our business functions, and really wanted to learn that so that they could help create those efficiencies that we talked about, help refine those business processes, and make us better as a whole organization. And you know, and Hampton touched on this as well, that it seemed like Avaap would be able to provide us a more personalized experience. Some of the other implementer organizations that we talked to, they are doing implementations for huge organizations, you know, 30,000, 100,000 employee organizations, and that just didn't appeal to us. We wanted a smaller organization that could be agile and make very quick decisions and resource modifications, just like Hampton mentioned. We had a little bit of that in our project as well, where we were able to tweak and save money just because we recognized that, hey, perhaps we missed it in the scoping, or we don't have the appropriate resources. So we were able to pivot, make quick decisions, and I'm not so sure that that would happen with some of the other implementers that we spoke to, but overall, very positive experience for sure.
Thank you. Bill?
Yeah, so we did our RFP a little bit different. We put the RFP out to vendors, asking them to bring an implementation partner with them to do sort of a joint presentation. And you know, I feel like that's worked for us in the past, because if the software vendor wants to get the business, they're going to bring one of their best partners with them. And I feel like that's what they did in this process. And, you know, seeing how amazing Workday was, combined with the amount of experience that the people on the Avaap team had doing these kinds of things before, it made the decision that much easier. And, you know, I will agree with what the others have said about, you know, once we started on the project, the Avaap team's been amazing. And I have not worked with a more responsive group of people in my career. I mean, they move quickly, and we have not at any point in the project had to worry about somebody from Avaap holding things up. Believe me, we've had to try to keep up on our end to make sure that we weren't holding things up. So it's been really great, and we are just past the halfway mark. And I feel like the project is completely on track, completely on budget, and we're going to have a great go live in December.
Appreciate it.
Hey, Rich, can I add one more thing?
Sure.
I would like to mention that we were able to finish our project on time during a pandemic and 10% under budget. That's unheard of. So it's fantastic job by the Avaap team.
Actually, you know what? I want to add to that, because the pandemic sort of got really bad right as we were going into our unit testing, and there were travel bans, and we had to scramble to figure out how we were going to do unit testing from everybody sitting at their house. And Avaap did not miss a beat, and we came up with a strategy, and we were able to execute on it. It was a little bumpy the first couple of days, kind of figuring that out. But we've gotten into a real rhythm, and it's been amazing to me that we've been doing this project remotely for about 4 or 5 months now, and we have not missed a beat.
Yep. Well, Bill, actually, if you want to stay on that theme, I actually want to jump to that topic, because clearly it's top of mind for all of us, as you know, throughout the country, throughout the globe, how we all manage just our day-to-day personal lives with our families, and how our business, and each of you are in different industries. And when the pandemic really, I said, came in where the US got shut down, I would say, let's just call it March 1. 2 of you were in the middle. One was just starting the implementation. One was in the middle of implementing finance, and the other was in the middle of just the full platform. So I guess Jared or Bill, why don't we just keep with you, since you were on this, like, just talk a little bit about what COVID, the impact to your business, and the decision even just to continue this project, and what you were seeing as, you know, you obviously did continue, and the benefits that you were expecting to see. I'm sure that these were not easy decisions. So, Bill?
No, not at all. And I will tell you that our governor issued a stay-at-home order on April 1st. Well, it wasn't April 1st, but we ended up closing all of our stores on April 1st before we were deemed an essential business. And we actually laid off 2,500 frontline employees and several hundred support employees. And that was one of the roughest days of my career to do that. But the organization through all of that was still committed to keep this project going because of we knew that we were going to be on the other end of this at some point. We were in a strong financial position going into the pandemic, and we knew it was going to cost us a lot more money if we picked up and, if we stopped and then came back to it later. That just wasn't an option. I think what helped was that we had some strong commitment from our executive leadership, our CHRO, as well as our CFO and our COO. We saw that this was going to be a need regardless. And the other piece that I'll say, we were able to reopen our stores and get revenue back, and we're almost back to normal now, at least from a revenue standpoint. I almost recommend doing this thing remotely because I think people have been more productive and more available. There's been a lot less, you don't have people walking by your desk and having a conversation, and you lose 5 minutes here, you lose 5 minutes there. I mean, it's been pretty amazing. And we've been talking about bringing people back to the office, but people involved in the project are hesitant right now because people have been so productive working from home.
Interesting. Yeah. Jared, you want to share?
Yeah, obviously, in the travel industry, we've taken quite a hit from the pandemic. We were 3 months into our financial phase of the project, financial and procurement, and it was a difficult decision, to say the least. I'll give you some stats here, Rich. We went from 10,000 passengers a day down to 250 passengers a day. We had 96 flights per day down to 7 flights per day. So when you think about the impact to revenue alone, we, just like everyone else that is attending today, were impacted severely. But we didn't know how to, what was our business going to look like next week, next month? What's it going to look like 3 years from now? So it was a very difficult decision because obviously our finance team, who is neck deep in an implementation, needs to shift gears. They need to pivot and start thinking about how do we survive as an organization. Forget about how do we implement a new ERP. So it was a tough few days, but we had, very much like Bill mentioned, we had support from our executive staff. We had, surprisingly, the finance team they were, 3 months into this, they had so much energy invested into the process. They'd been through unit testing. They were starting to really see what benefit Workday could provide. And it was the finance team that said, hey, we know we have all of this additional work. We know that we have all of the uncertainty surrounding this pandemic that is creating a lot of stress for everybody, but we can see the benefit of Workday. We have trust in our implementation partner, Avaap, that they're going to, be able to pivot with us and change our model for implementation to a remote-only model. So it was actually the finance team that really pushed to continue this in the face of so many obstacles and unknowns. So it was challenging, to say the least.
Yeah. Hampton?
In our case, there were numerous opportunities throughout the project where it was questionable whether we were going to be able to stay on track. And it had to do primarily with resource constraints. As Jarrett mentioned, we're similar in that we do not have large teams in HR or accounting or some of the other areas. And so the project put enormous strain on the staff because we're working in this super inefficient legacy environment at the same time that we are attempting to build this next generation environment. And so we had had countless discussions when we would come up to a fork in the road and it looked like we were about to be in the ditch again. And the question would be, do we go ahead and extend the deadline, extend the go live date? And we were well aware of what the consequences would be if we did not go live by a certain time period, because things have to happen in a certain sequence. And obviously, for financial reasons, if you can do a cutover at the beginning of a fiscal year, it's just going to be better than a quarter or a mid-year conversion. So the 7/1 go live was really etched in our consciousness, and that had been challenged constantly throughout the project. So in our case, we had just completed on-site end-to-end testing, and it was over our spring break. And on that Sunday night, a message goes out, we're going to keep the college closed for one more week, sort of figure out what's happening here. And then the college went remote in terms of instruction a week after the end of spring break. Well, we decided to pivot the project to all remote. And quite honestly, it's what saved the project. It enabled people to actually focus more on the project. We were remote ready. We just had a few tweaks to make in the team, but it was actually a boost to the project. So in a very odd and sort of weird kind of way, the pandemic really helped us cross the finish line on time.
Yeah, it's been amazing to see that from my shoes as well. And, you know, from a history of organizations that typically you implementing these types of solutions, you got to be in the desk, in the seat, next to folks 24/7. And it's just the exact opposite. And I think I would agree. I think there's some level of client interaction that's always great, but it's been very amazing to see the positive impact of virtual deployments. And, you know, I think as we look to wrap this up at the top of the hour, I would just ask each of you, and start with you, Bill, just think like, if starting today, if there was one thing you want to share, that if you knew now before you went into this endeavor with Workday, what would you share? One thing you wish you knew.
You know, I don't know if I can think of one, because I mean, I wish I knew this was coming. I think we all wish we knew that this pandemic was coming. But other than that, I mean, we did a lot of research, and you know, we talked to some other customers ahead of time, and I feel like we went into this as prepared as we could be. And there, you know, I will say the other piece that's nice about this is that the Workday customers that we've talked to were very happy to share their experiences with their implementation and whichever provider that they work with. I will say some of the things that we got right that I would encourage anybody that's looking to do this is make sure that you've got solid project management inside the organization as well. This, you know, as great as Avaap is, you can't just hand this off to an implementation vendor to do this. I learned that lesson the hard way on another project. And the combination of the strong project management within our organization that we brought on externally, some really strong project managers with Avaap, I think is what's helped us to be successful.
Appreciate that. Jared?
Yeah, I tell you, we had the benefit of having two phases. So there was some learning, some lessons learned in phase one that we were able to take over to phase two. And the one thing that really sticks out to me is training. Train early, train often, train your staff so that they can, as you begin to develop and, you know, and design Workday to accommodate your organization, make sure you're training your staff before they see it, they're familiar with it. We were a little late to the game in our HCM implementation in phase one, and it hurt us. It made the phase one a little more stressful than it could have been, and I think we had to do a little more cleanup on post-go live than we would have had we trained our staff ahead of time. So I think training and really embracing that quality assurance, that delivery assurance tool that Workday has was another lesson learned as well.
Okay. And Hampton, you want to wrap us up here, and then we'll see if any questions from folks out on that are tuned in?
Sure. There were countless things that I was told in advance that did not have meaning until I was actually in the project. And of course, I know way more now than I knew going into it. The one thing that I would encourage people that are embarking on this journey to really recognize is, regardless of the strength of the deployment partner, the client has to own the vision for what you're trying to accomplish. You have to know where you're trying to go, and you have to be able to articulate that. Because if you can't, you're really not going to get a system that is built to bring to life what you need for your organization. Two other things that I think are significant is I encourage everyone to be open to change. If you're the leader of the project and are going to be the leader of the project, be open to personal change, because you are asking everyone on the team and everyone in the organization to make major changes. And so you have to be willing to undergo those changes yourself and to show what that looks like. And finally, I would say that as cool as the technology is, it's the people that really matter. It's your own team, it's supporting your own team, and it's supporting the team that's with Avaap. They supported us, and I feel like we had a very reciprocal, supportive relationship. And I just cannot overstate the significance of the role that the people play. We had an issue about a week ago where we had people on the Hinds side and on the Avaap side that pulled all-nighters to solve a problem for us. And quite honestly, I didn't even know it had happened until the next day. That only comes from people that are genuinely committed to what they're doing. So the technology can be really cool, but it's really the people that matter.
I appreciate that. I mean, we are now kind of at the top of the hour, and I don't know if Abby or Melissa from our marketing team, if there are any questions out there that I don't see, but if they're not, or we can wrap this up.
Well, I wanted to thank everybody for joining us today, and thank you, Rich, Jarrett, Hampton, and Bill, for sharing your insights and your workday successes with us. We truly appreciate it, and I know I learned a little bit, so I hope everyone else in attendance did as well. If you have any questions, please feel free to pop those into the Q&A box, and we will get those rolling. Otherwise, you can reach out to our team at info@avaap.com, and we'll have somebody reach out to you and answer any questions you may have.
Okay.
Oh, it looks like we do have a question. Can the panelists share what is next on their Workday journey? Will they continue to build out Workday with new features?
Who wants to start?
Yes,
start with that one.
yes. I'm sorry. We are currently trying to secure and move forward with planning and Prism, and then hopefully we're going to move right into student after that.
Yeah, our phase 2 in January, we're doing core HCM, financials, payroll, but we're going to be doing the learning management, talent management in 2021, as well as Prism, which is like the data analytics piece. And then we'll probably replace some of our other budgeting and expense reporting software with Workday eventually. We've got some products that work, but they're out of scope right now, but we'll probably move everything to Workday in the future.
Yep, same thing. We're going to take a breath for a few months and try to get back to some level of normalcy, and then Q1 of 2021, we're going to dive into learning management, capital projects, a few other things as well.
That's a good question. Any Abby's or anything else out there?
I am not seeing anything. It looks like that was the only question. Thank you so much for everyone who attended, and be sure to visit us at avaap.com. Have a great day.
Jarrett, Hampton, Bill, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. I know you're more than busy. Thanks you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.